for us, your message to Filipino fans who supported you this week?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to not just the Filipino fans, but to everyone. I think, here in Indian Wells, this is a really big tournament where a lot of tennis fans go to support. So I really hope that you enjoyed watching some of my matches. I hope that you can keep following my journey, and of course sa mga Pinoy, maraming salamat sa suporta. Magkita tayo sana sa Miami, at sana sa susunod kong laban mas maganda yung laro ko.
Miami does not roll out the red carpet for just anybody. You do not show up in Miami Gardens and suddenly get treated like one of the main attractions unless you already forced the whole tennis world to pay attention. But that is exactly why Alexandra Eala's arrival at the 2026 Miami Open felt different. The energy around her was bigger, louder, and impossible to ignore. This was not normal tournament buzz. This felt like Miami remembering exactly who shook up the event 1 year ago. Drop a comment below. Do you think Alex Eala can go even deeper in Miami in 2026 than she did last year? Or does being a seeded player bring a whole new kind of pressure? Because the difference 1 year can make is wild. 12 months ago, Eala came into this tournament ranked number 140 in the world. She was not the headline. She was not the player organizers were expected to spotlight. Most casual fans barely knew her name, and nobody thought the draw would start bending around her momentum or the growing noise around her matches.
Put away. Excuse me. Did he get it? Please. Excuse me, move to the side. Thank you. Good job, Alex. Make a pass, make a pass. Excuse me, make a pass, please. Thank you.
She looked like just another young player trying to survive a massive event. Then everything changed. Eala tore through the field and beat Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek during her stunning 2025 run in Miami, turning herself from an underdog into one of the biggest stories in the tournament. She was only 19 at the time, and now, at 20, she is back as the number 32 seed, not as a surprise name, but as a real threat that everyone sees coming. Miami did not forget that run for 1 second, and this time, the tournament made sure Alex Eala could feel it the moment she arrived. The first thing people need to understand about what is happening right now is how rare this situation actually is. A seeded spot at a WTA 1000 tournament is not something tournaments hand out just because a player has hype around them. You earn that position through months of results, ranking points, and real wins against serious competition. And that is exactly how Alex Eala arrived at the 2026 Miami Open, as the number 32 seed. That single number changes everything. Being seeded means Eala skips the chaos of the opening round completely. While dozens of lower-ranked players are battling through exhausting first-round matches just to stay alive in the draw, she gets a first-round bye. That means more recovery time, more preparation, and the type of match scheduling usually reserved for players the tournament knows belong on the biggest stages. And the numbers backing her rise are hard to ignore. After her strong run at Indian Wells, where she pushed Coco Gauff deep into a brutal match that eventually ended in a retirement, Eala's live ranking climbed to around world number 28. Think about that jump for a second. Just a little over a year ago, she was sitting outside the top 100, still trying to break into the conversation. This was not a slow climb through the rankings. This was a full sprint up the ladder. For years, the tennis establishment kept Alex Eala in the safe category of promising young talent, the kind of label players hear all the time while they are still waiting for their real breakthrough. But Miami 2026 is where that label officially stopped making sense. She is not just potential anymore. She is arriving as a seeded threat that every opponent now has to prepare for. And before we go deeper into what Miami could look like this year, the Indian Wells performance deserves its own spotlight moment. Because when Eala walked into that tournament as the 31st seed, it was already a historic milestone. The first Filipino player to compete in the Indian Wells main draw at that level of recognition. And when the moment arrived at Indian Wells, Alex Eala delivered results that actually matched the hype around her. Reaching the round of 16 at a tournament that stacked is not some small achievement. In fact, she went deeper in the draw than several players ranked above her, which immediately got people in the tennis world paying closer attention. But the match everyone started talking about was her showdown with Coco Gauff. At the time, Gauff was sitting at world number 4, one of the most recognizable faces in women's tennis, and a player many analysts expected to cruise through that section of the draw without too much resistance. Instead, she ran straight into Alex Eala. The match quickly turned into a real battle. Gauff was not dominating the way people predicted, and the pressure was building with every game. Eventually, the match ended with Gauff retiring. Now, retirements in tennis can happen for a lot of different reasons, injuries, fatigue, or a combination of things, but the context of the match still mattered. This was not a comfortable win for the favorite. It was a competitive fight that ended with Eala moving into the round of 16, while the higher-ranked star was suddenly out of the tournament. That moment sent a message the rankings had already been hinting at for months. Alex Eala is no longer a player the top names on tour can overlook. Not anymore. Her Indian Wells run eventually ended against Linda Noskova, who won that match convincingly. But what stood out was how Eala handled the loss. There was no drama, no frustration spilling over in interviews. Instead, she spoke calmly about what she learned and immediately shifted her focus to the next challenge, Miami. So when she arrived in Miami Gardens for the 2026 Miami Open, the entire atmosphere around her felt different. The crowds showing up for her practice sessions at Hard Rock Stadium were noticeably bigger than what most non-American players at her ranking typically receive. And for people who have been following her rise closely, that part was not surprising at all. Because Alex Eala's practice sessions have been drawing serious attention for quite some time now. And the attention around Alex Eala is not just happening inside the stadiums, it is exploding online too. One recent practice video of hers pulled in more than 94,000 views in just 24 hours. Think about that for a second. That level of engagement is rare, even for many players already sitting comfortably inside the top 30. For someone who is still climbing toward that group, it tells you the interest around her is moving fast. Tournament organizers notice numbers like that. They track attendance, viewership, and how many people show up around certain courts. When a player consistently fills practice courts beyond their normal seating capacity, that is valuable information, and well-run tournaments act on that information quickly. Bigger courts mean more fans can watch. More fans watching means louder atmospheres, stronger broadcast numbers, and a better overall product for the event. So when Miami starts adjusting scheduling or court assignments around Alex Eala, it is not random. It means the tournament has looked at the data and realized something important. She is becoming one of the attractions people are showing up for. Not a side story, not just a nice surprise run, a real main event. That is a massive shift compared to the situation a year ago. 12 months earlier, Eala arrived in Miami as a lower-ranked player whose matches were simply placed wherever space was available. Nobody in the tournament office was worrying about which court she would play on or whether the stands would fill up. Now that conversation looks very different. And just before the Miami Open even started, Eala made another move that showed how quickly her profile is growing. She stopped by Nike's world headquarters in Oregon, and this was not some routine athlete visit. Nike is one of the most selective sports brands in the world when it comes to how they highlight their athletes at the corporate level. When a player is featured prominently at headquarters, when their story becomes part of the brand's narrative, it usually means Nike sees long-term potential. And that is exactly the treatment Alex Eala received. Reports from the visit confirmed she was given a very warm welcome, with her image featured in Nike's History in Full Bloom campaign. That phrase is not random either. It connects to the sampaguita, the national flower of the Philippines. A symbol that Nike clearly understands represents something bigger than just a tennis player rising through the rankings. Nike is not just promoting Alex Eala as another athlete on the roster. They are building a full story around who she is. Her identity, her heritage, and the incredible trajectory of her career are becoming part of the brand narrative. That kind of storytelling only happens when a company believes a player has the potential to represent something much bigger than results on a scoreboard. And now, there are strong rumors circulating that Nike could be developing a custom Sampaguita-inspired signature collection specifically for Eala. If that actually happens, it would place her in a commercial category that very few tennis players ever reach. Because at that level, athletes are not just wearing a brand anymore. The brand is designing products around who they are. Think about the names that normally sit in that category. Those athletes are not just competitors. They become cultural figures whose identity and story are powerful enough to influence the entire sport. For a 20-year-old player from the Philippines to even be mentioned near that tier is a massive signal. It means Nike is making a serious long-term bet on Alex Eala's future. Now, here is another number that deserves attention. After her run at Indian Wells, Eala earned $15,720 in prize money from that tournament alone. That pushed her career prize earnings to over $1.6 million before the age of 21. And that number matters for more reasons than people might realize. Prize money in tennis is not just about rewards. It creates independence. It allows a player to make decisions about coaching, travel schedules, recovery, and training based purely on what helps their development the most. Eala has already built a financial foundation strong enough to give her that kind of stability. You can see it in how she carries herself. She is not chasing results out of desperation. She is not playing every tournament trying to prove she belongs on the tour. That conversation is already over. And what Eala said publicly just before the 2026 Miami Open is something fans should really pay attention to. She spoke about how Miami 2025 was a beautiful experience. The unexpected run, the huge wins, and the wave of attention that followed. She even called it the start of everything. But she also made one thing very clear. She is not coming back to Miami just to relive that story. Alex Eala spoke very openly about how much has changed since that breakout run in Miami. She explained that the past year brought both great wins and tough losses, and that every match added experience she simply did not have before. That process built something much more important than ranking points. It built real self-belief. Then she said something that perfectly captures where her mindset is right now. She said she knows she belongs at this level and that she is here to stay. That is not the mindset of a player hoping to sneak through the draw or survive a couple of rounds. That is the mindset of someone who has fully accepted her place among the top competitors on the tour. There is a big difference between trying to prove you belong and simply stepping onto the court knowing you already do. And considering everything that has happened over the last 12 months, that confidence is not hype. It is earned. Now, when you look at the actual draw for the 2026 Miami Open, things get even more interesting. As the number 32 seed, Eala enters the tournament with a structure that could set up some massive matchups as early as the third round. One of the most talked about possibilities involves Iga Swiatek, who famously lost to Eala at this very tournament in 2025, could once again find herself on a collision course depending on how the early rounds unfold. And this year, the storyline is even more fascinating because Swiatek arrives in Miami after a difficult stretch of results, including an early exit at Indian Wells. But here is the key detail people keep pointing to. The version of Swiatek arriving under pressure is something Alex Eala has already handled before. Her victory over the former world #1 in Miami last year was not some lucky break. It was a disciplined, technically sharp performance. Eala executed her strategy, stayed aggressive when the pressure built, and closed the match with the composure of a veteran. Whether the rematch actually happens this year depends on both players handling their early rounds. But the possibility alone is already generating serious buzz. And this time, the attention is not about a shocking upset. It would be a high-stakes clash between two players who already have real history on these courts. The bigger picture for Alex Eala at the 2026 Miami Open comes down to one thing: ranking points. Because of her incredible semifinal run here in 2025, she arrives at this tournament with a serious number of points to defend. That is how the ranking system works. When you go deep one year, the pressure the next year is about protecting that ground or pushing even further. If Eala manages to repeat that semifinal run, she holds her position and stays firmly inside the rising group of players climbing the rankings. But if she goes even deeper, into the final or beyond, the conversation about her position in the world rankings changes instantly. A deep run in Miami could realistically push Alex Eala into the top 20 for the first time in her career. And if that happens, it would mark another historic milestone for Filipino tennis. At this point, her career is starting to look like a collection of firsts, and the pace at which she is adding them keeps getting faster. So why exactly did Miami give her such a noticeable reception this year? The answer is actually very simple. It is not sentiment. It is not charity. And it is not just goodwill toward a popular player. Tournaments respond to players who bring value to the event, and Eala is delivering exactly that. She sells tickets, fills practice courts, generates online engagement, and creates moments that fans cannot stop talking about. The tournament business runs on those four things, and when a player consistently delivers them, organizers start treating that player like a major attraction. Alex Eala has reached that level now. Not only because of her incredibly loyal and passionate Filipino fan base, which is easily one of the loudest supporter groups in tennis, but because her story is starting to capture attention far beyond that community. Her rise, her composure under pressure, and the speed of her progress are pulling in fans from all over the sport. Miami clearly understands what it has in front of it. From world number 140 to a seeded player, from underdog to headline matchups, Alex Eala's arrival at the Miami Open shows just how far she has come. If you are riding with Alex Eala this tournament and think her biggest moments are still ahead, hit that like button, subscribe for more tennis coverage, and drop your Miami prediction in the comments. Because one thing is clear, this story is only getting started.